You want me to put that on my Tudor?
Hello, I'm HG Tudor. All narcissists, irrespective of their subschool, have a fuel matrix. If you'd like to understand more about the constitution of a narcissist's fuel matrix, then you ought to go to the Knowledge Vault and obtain pipelines. If you want to also know what happens to a narcissist when those appliances are lost, affected, malfunctioning even, then you should also obtain from the Knowledge Vault Understanding Changes to the Narcissist Fuel Matrix. Irrespective of the subschool of narcissist, we have tertiary, secondary, and a primary source. Sometimes the primary source is missing. Most of the time, that individual is not. The ranking of those appliances is relevant with regard to their use to us, with regard to the provision of fuel and character traits and residual benefits. Tertiary sources are effectively strangers and acquaintances. Their fuel isn't particularly potent, we might have many of them in our fuel matrix, and they can dip in and out. Secondary sources cover family, friends, colleagues, neighbours, and some intimate partners also, somebody that we're dating, an affair partner a bit on the side, an individual who is a friend with benefits. The secondary sources are of moderate potency when it comes to fuel and can often be very useful vis-à-vis character traits and residual benefits. We then have at the top of the tree the primary source, usually intimate, sometimes non-intimate. The person that is both the easiest to control combined with the best fuel, character traits and residual benefits. So in the case of Harry's wife, Prince Harry is her intimate partner primary source. Prior to that, it was the chef, Corey. Prior to that, it was Trevor Engelson. At one point, it would have been a father as a non-intimate partner primary source. However, he is now a non-intimate secondary source, as is her mother, Doria. This means that the potency of their fuel is of moderate significance. They're useful in terms of character trait acquisition, residual benefits, for instance, facade management, helping out, for instance, with the children, access to networks, access to opportunities, and of course, the use of an appliance can alter through the passage of time. We have seen, of course, that Thomas Markle Sr. has actually been disengaged from, which is quite unusual for a secondary source. More usually, we keep them on the shelf, picking them up, putting them back there as and when is required, hoovering them off the shelf with perhaps a telephone call or a text message or going to see that person. Harry's wife has disengaged because she has had nothing to do with her father for a number of years, has smeared him, and had made it, as far as we're aware, impossible for him to contact her. No telephone number, no social media messages can get through. And thus, she is disengaged from him. She continues, as far as we are told, to have some involvement with her mother, Doria. Now, this all may seem rather strange, because you think to yourself, well, based on the information that we've been fed, Doria disappeared for a number of years. Nobody seems quite sure where she was. Some people think that she was in jail. Others think she was off doing her own thing and had abandoned Thomas and Harry's wife. Meanwhile, Thomas was seen to be the doting parent, creating his little princess, affording her financial assistance, opportunity in terms of auditions, guidance, and generally looking after her. To your mind, you probably think, well, of the two individuals, of the two parents, I'd be more inclined to want to continue to have a relationship with Thomas because he's the one that gave, whereas Doria basically seemed to have fucked off. That, of course, would be the view of you as a non-narcissist. When he was providing her with financial support, providing her with fuel, providing her with guidance and audition opportunities, she, of course, had him painted white. And undoubtedly Doria would have been painted black. However, Just because Thomas Markle has perhaps created a level of indebtedness from his daughter doesn't mean that she recognises that. The narcissist has no object constancy. This means that you could remember the narcissist's birthday 19 years out of 20, and then on the 20th year be a little bit slow to congratulate them. Your failure to congratulate the narcissist wounds and causes you to be painted black. You are now Beelzebub, Satan. The narcissist regards you as a crass, treacherous individual who cannot be trusted. The fact that you've remembered 19 birthdays out of 20 evaporates into the ether. It's irrelevant as far as the narcissist is concerned. You're either with the narcissist or you're against the narcissist. And your failure to remember the narcissist's birthday results in you being painted black. And all those 19 occasions where you remembered the birthday and did something special for the narcissist, poof, that evaporates into thin air. It's cast to one side. If you were to protest and say, why are you being so huffy with me just because I was a little slow to congratulate you on your birthday, and after all it was because my son's in hospital at the moment and I've remembered the last 19, that's not going to get you anywhere, because you're criticising the narcissist. And the narcissist will respond by saying, oh, you only remembered my birthday in the past when it suited you. Now when things are more important, you can't be bothered, can you? Of course, that's a load of tosh. But from the narcissist's perspective, that's being said to nullify the threat to control that you pose by questioning them as to their decision-making, as to being unpleasant to you because you've been a little bit late in congratulating them on their current birthday. Everything that you've done before is irrelevant. All of the good things that you've done count for squaddly dit. And the narcissist isn't interested in your protestations of all the things that you've done before. That's in the past. It's irrelevant. What matters is now, and the now is you were slow to congratulate that narcissist. So all of the good things that Thomas Markle did in the past, and bear in mind, of course, as a narcissist himself, he wasn't doing it from a position of emotional empathy, he was doing it in order to control his daughter. But nevertheless, all of the favours that he did, all the financial support that he's provided, all the tuition fees that he paid, all the auditions he helped her get, all the other things that he assisted her with became irrelevant. He became painted black because he wouldn't be controlled. Because when it came near to her wedding, there was a possibility of him opening his mouth about her behaviours. And the fact that he was courting the paparazzi and was seen with journalists meant that he was then viewed as treacherous. Harry's wife, Narcissism, didn't give him a pass to say, well, you know, for umpteen years he's been really good to me, so we'll let him off on this occasion. That doesn't happen. And therefore, everything that he'd done in the past is discounted. And the fact that he became viewed as too difficult to control meant that he was painted black, smeared, and undoubtedly said rather unpleasant things about, for instance, to explain to Prince Harry why she doesn't want anything to do with him. And therefore, he's cast out into the cold and disengaged from. Now, of course, he could be hoovered back in at any time if her narcissism deems that that's appropriate. But for the time being, she continues to assert control over Thomas by staying in a position of withdrawal, ignoring his ill health, ignoring that he's approaching his dotage, and of course ignoring all of the good things that he did for her. Doria, on the other hand, she does have an involvement with. This is because Doria is compliant. Doria isn't the one running around threatening to tell tales. Doria isn't the one that is cozied up with journalists. Indeed, it's likely that Doria is acting as a lieutenant for her daughter, acting in tandem with her to enable Harry's wife to achieve her aims, because it also achieves the aims, and those being the prime ones, for Doria also. Doria doesn't threaten control. Doria goes along with the grift, if you will. Doria does as she's told, allows that facade management, allows Harry's wife to project a particular image without threatening it in any way, and all of that suits her also, because it enables her to get her own prime aims. There are instances, of course, where two narcissists will operate in tandem, and the reason that they do is because they don't spend a huge amount of time together. If they did, it would be more fractious. But they serve a purpose to one another. It's likely that Doria is able to control her daughter by doing her favours, and therefore Harry's wife expresses her gratitude. She's also likely to receive the residual benefit of money, which means that she gets that and she's therefore content to cede control to her daughter because of the receipt of those monies. Harry's wife is able to assert control over her mother through flattery, by wanting her to do things for her, for keeping her mouth shut in relation to certain activity, and for generally being compliant. And ultimately, the reason why she's chosen Doria over Thomas Markle Sr. comes down to this. Thomas Markle proved difficult to control. Thus, he was painted black, and ultimately, he was disengaged from. Doria has not proven difficult to control. Even though she is a narcissist also, her aims have aligned with that of Harry's wife, and because they don't have too much to do with one another on a daily basis, it means that the accord that has effectively been reached is one that remains intact. Thus, she acts as a lieutenant to her daughter. There is, of course, the risk that it could blow apart. Witness the way that Harry's wife looked at her mother at the Grenfell incident, where she got the death stare. So she's only a moment away from being devalued and possibly even being disengaged from herself. But because she is compliant, because she doesn't threaten control on a repeated basis, because she goes along with what Harry's wife wants and needs, she is kept in the fold and she's painted white. But like anybody in the narcissist fuel matrix, that could change in the blink of an eye. But for the moment, it remains the case that she has cast Thomas to one side, whilst Doria receives her favour. I'm HG Tudor. Thank you for listening.